Welcome to the Great Awakening Ministry. I am Minister and Yogini Joanne Lee. And on this week's show, we have Richard Lawrence. Richard is a spiritual teacher and an international best-selling author whose books have been sold in many countries. These include the international bestseller Unlock Your Psychic Powers, Journey into Supermind, Realize Your Inner Potential, co-authored with Dr. George King, and God's Guides and Guardian Angels, co-authored with Mark Bennett. He has participated in hundreds of TV and radio shows worldwide, including GB News, Talk Radio, Talk TV, Times Radio, and Coast to Coast AM. In addition to having a column in The Observer, he has written for the Daily Express, Daily Mail, The Sun, Women's World, His Health, Health and Fitness, the USA's Whole Life Times, and Phenome-News, New Zealand's lifestyle magazine. Beyond the UK, he has also spoken internationally at a variety of venues, including churches, synagogues, Buddhist temples, schools, universities, business conventions, charitable events, and bookstores throughout USA, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Belgium, Italy, and Nigeria. And for over 30 years, he has been a keynote speaker at London's largest and most prestigious Mind, Body, and Spirit Festival.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
So, Richard, welcome to the Great Awakening Show.
Thank you, Yogini Joanne. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Absolutely fantastic. And, well, we're going to get straight into all of the wonderful questions that I have for you, because your divine knowledge and wisdom is so appreciated for our audience.
Well, it's an honor to be on your show and on your station.
Yeah, UK Health Radio. Absolutely brilliant.
My very good friend, Chrissy Blaze.
Yes.
Is regular, I think, with you, and she certainly raves about you and the station. So
yeah, absolutely.
If you're a friend of hers, you're a friend of mine.
Oh, she's wonderful. I love Chrissy. Yeah. Can't wait. We're doing our Awakening to Astrology monthly show.
She's really good. Really good.
I know. Richard, wow. We are all about Kundalini and raising the Kundalini and the chakras. But for our audience, it's a little bit esoteric and a little bit out there sometimes for people. So please, may you give our audience an overview of what Kundalini energy is, our chakras and our subtle energy system, just a little bit for them to understand this.
Sure. Well, I think the first thing is that we all have an aura. And I'm sure some are familiar with that. There's lots of evidence actually for it. There's photographic evidence now and other forms of evidence. But more importantly, you can feel it, you can sense it. If you unlock your psychic powers, if you develop your sensibilities, which is very much a personal decision, how far people want to go with this. But in the aura is our physical health, our mental health, our emotional well-being, our spiritual health. And it's either in balance or it isn't. And the chakras, or the psychic centers, if you want to call them that, these are the major energy points within the aura. And that's the key thing I would stress, that's in the aura. Now, the aura is, if you like, it used to be called the etheric counterpart. It's a psychic aspect of our being. It's something that one can see. I run events, and very often at those events, quite a number of people, 30, 40% maybe of the audience who've never done this before will be able to see at least some of that aura. Just a glimpse of it, I would call it. But that doesn't matter whether you see it or not. It doesn't actually matter whether you've heard of Kundalini or not. I mean, there's great poets like Wordsworth, Tennyson's another one, the wonderful Hildegard of Bingen, if you come across her, the German abbess from, I think, the 12th century, who had undoubtedly had Kundalini experiences, Pascal, many others through history, but who'd never heard of Kundalini or the chakras or the aura. So you don't need that knowledge. But if you do have that knowledge, then you can enhance your own mental, physical, emotional, spiritual well-being. So that'd be my sort of summary of it. And then the actual, when you get to the chakras, those are the 7 major points. Funnily enough, I came across an opinion poll from YouGov, and it's about 4 years ago. They did this poll, bit less, and it said that 34% of the British public believe in chakras and the need to unblock chakras for their energy, for their harmony, and so on, which actually amazed me. I thought it might be maybe 1 in 10 at the most.
Yeah.
But I want to say this, I'm very glad that, you obviously are, I know, from a great yoga tradition yourself. And I think that's important because I'm going to say there's a lot of nonsense out there. I'm sorry, I have to just say that, get that out there.
And a lot of people are not even teaching yoga, true. They're just teaching exercise. And there's so many Kundalini teachers who've done 2-week course and they call them the Kundalini teacher.
I know, it's been debased, really. And the problem with that is that if you get it wrong, it could even be dangerous, and that's known, and it was always taught by the great yogis. I was very fortunate, just to give my sort of background a little. I was taught by Dr. George King, who was a truly, truly great yogi, a great master of yoga. I mean, a very advanced one. And he was very cautious and careful about what he taught people, especially in relation to Kundalini and the chakras. But it's there, and the chakras are he called them the second most valuable thing in existence. I mean, behind me, we've got the universe, and I actually see the planets, the galaxies, in a way, as the chakras of the universe.
Yes, because there's 7 main planets. It's like we're the microcosm, and our solar system is. I believe that they are enormous chakras in themselves.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, because they're centers of mind. Even if that mind isn't physical, all of it, because it isn't all physical. So we live in a multi-dimensional universe, and he calls chakras the second most valuable thing in existence, which was quite a statement, really. But he said there's one thing more valuable, and that's life. And that when we get to Kundalini, that is the life. And it's a female force because we live on a female planet, the Mother Earth.
That's it.
A point which is strangely missed by a lot of ecologists they don't seem to care about the Mother Earth, which is really odd. They care about themselves, future generations, the preservation of the human race, but not the planet, the goddess, Gaia, on which we live. Yes,
that's so true. And the Kundalini is our soul potential, isn't it?
It is.
They say that it's, dormant and cold, like it's the serpent energy, cold 3.5 times at the base of the spine. And, I believe as a yogini that the whole reason we're here on this earth is to raise our Kundalini. It doesn't matter what belief you have, if you're atheist or if you're a Buddhist or if you're a Muslim, it doesn't matter. We are here to raise our Kundalini to have that enlightenment at the crown, and which causes the unification of our soul consciousness with God consciousness. This is the enlightened oneness that we're all here for, isn't it? Please tell us a little bit about raising that Kundalini, the serpent energy, and what enlightenment means to you.
Yeah, well, I think, and by the way, I agree with exactly what you just said, and so would Dr. King agree with exactly what. So would all the great yogis who understood Kundalini. Strangely enough, in some of the great yoga teachings, there's no mention of Kundalini at all, such as the aphorisms of Patanjali, which are just wonderful, as I'm sure you know probably better than I do. But the Kundalini is the mystic aspect to it. And whether you know about it, as I said earlier, or not, it's there. It's a force, and it will activate these chakras. But the key thing is not to force it. Now, you mentioned there's a lot of, I don't know if you said bogus, but people who teach in Kundalini Yoga who really aren't qualified, and I couldn't agree more. And most of the time, they won't do any harm. They won't do any harm most of the time, because most of the time it won't work at all. what they're teaching. Won't work. And so no harm is done. No good is done, but no harm is done. But if it did work, some of these things, it could be quite dangerous, because some of them teach you to force Kundalini upwards to higher chakras. Funny enough, another thing I received actually by email in the last month was a key to energizing your chakras. I'm just illustrating what's out there at the moment. And it was actually not your chakras, it was energizing your third eye. I won't read it because I don't like to sort of name names, but this magazine, actually a magazine I've written for myself years ago, but it's sad to see, put this thing out, and what it was, Yogini, was a smoothie. It was,
No way.
I am not kidding you, it was mango, spirulina, a few other things, and if you did all that, you'd energize your third eye. And this shows how lost people are.
It's just ridiculous.
And I bet you some people are doing it, thinking this is going to energize. It won't go near your third eye.
Without doing any meditation or energetic work whatsoever. Just
no, exactly.
You know, I mean.
But to be more positive, though, you know, what the problem we have in a nutshell on Earth is that our lower chakras. I mean, first of all chakras are good. And let's just say what they are. So there's the base of the spine, there's the sex center, there's the solar plexus center, the heart center, which isn't on the left, it's in the center, although it is linked to the physical heart. They're all linked to the body, and that's another thing we have to be careful with. There's the throat center, there's the third eye, the Christ center, probably the best known of them all, and then there's the crown center known as Brahma chakra. And they have Sanskrit names as well, of course. And so those are the 7 major centers. They aren't the only centers. There are multiple centers, and there are multiple what they call nadis, which are lines of force within the aura interconnecting the chakras. And these can get blocked. 2 things can happen. One, they can get blocked. And another is they can get diverted. And by that I mean they're going down the wrong avenues, the wrong channels, in the wrong direction, and habitual thought patterns of various kind cause those energies to flow down in a certain way. And if you get into a habit, that'll just happen. And so it will keep you away from enlightenment, which is what you asked me about.
Yes.
So all of the centers, all 7 of them, are good. They're all benign. They all have a very essential purpose. But most of the time, most people on Earth activate the lower ones, especially the lower 3.
Yes.
Perhaps, well, certainly sometimes wrongly, sometimes too much, at the expense of the higher ones. And so we have an inverse situation where the higher chakras are sort of dominated by the lower, and very little might even be coming from the higher chakras. So what we need to do is to reorientate ourselves so that the higher chakras are governing the lower ones.
And also, Richard, the lower ones are to do with material survival, sex, lust, money, you know, all of these things which is in the world around us. You know, as you, I mean, in every life we come in and we have to work through those to raise it, don't we? Our Kundalini,
we do
a little bit, and to learn those things about that each chakra as we come up. But then when we rise it to the higher chakras, then you're coming into love and insight and wisdom and divinity. You know, we are, that's the world we're in. I think I call it the egoic matrix out there. That we are, it's like it's, as they say, it's Maya. In Maya, it's the temptations, isn't it, of consumerism, of sex, of lust, of all the things that this bright and shiny world can give us, you know, the attachment to them lower chakras.
That's true. I mean, the lower chakras, I will say, could be used in a different way. So, for example, we do have to be practical in life. I mean, in order for you to start the Great Awakening movement that you started, you must have done a lot of groundwork, you know, a lot of material work, even legal work. You know, these things in their right place have to be used. We need to survive. We need to take care of our health, our financial situation to a degree, just so we can perform our spiritual missions or whatever our destiny is meant to be. We need those things. So the base center is important. The sex center is, I would say, very misused by most people. I don't exclude myself in the past either, by the way, from that. It's a misunderstood, but in its real self, it's a very wonderful center. It's I believe a smaller one than say the solar plexus or the base, or it should be. But it's in its place. It can bring tremendous sense of compassion for others, one-on-one, not lust, but compassion for others. It can bring certain psychic abilities, actually. Now, the solar plexus center, which is where you get the sort of dominant mentality of this world, really, the legal system, the political structure, the way it's all geared is towards materialism.
Yes.
It could be used in another way. It could be used to bring tremendous understanding, great concentration, great application of the conscious mind. It could, and certainly bring a lot of psychic abilities, including mediumship, and I've done this myself. Even if a medium realizes it or not, they could well be using this center if they're a good medium. So it has its very positive aspects, but we've misused the lower centers. And the reason we have it from a Kundalini point of view is a lot of the time the Kundalini isn't going up the spine, it's going up through other channels. And it may be up the front of the body, to put it simply, but there are multiple channels. And so this all comes back to reorientating. So just to take the solar plexus as one example, if you had that center guided by the higher chakras, it would be extremely valuable because you could bring your wisdom, but then you could understand, interpret, apply that wisdom. But the root, this is where the Gnani yogis, as I'm sure you know very well, they wouldn't, they were it's the yoga of wisdom, but it was rooted in meditation. They wouldn't just go off and start intellectualizing about the philosophy of life. They would meditate on it and then apply their meditations through logic. So the solar plexus has a role to play, but often we're using it in the wrong way.
That's really beautiful. For me, that's like you have the vices, of the chakras, which you can, when you work through and do the work and the inner work and the meditation for that, turn them into the virtues, which become graces. So out of every negative for that chakra, there's always the positive that you turn it around to be and turn it into that grace. Vice to grace. Yeah.
That's absolutely, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. It's a strange thing, isn't it? When you look at psychology, they're very focused on suppression, repression, and they'll talk about sexual repression, mental repression, emotional repression. They don't talk about soul repression. And soul repression is the biggest problem on earth, actually.
Yeah.
We are not listening to our soul. If we were, it would direct us. And again, the way to do that is to start tapping into the higher centers without forcing them. Just activate. I mean, just one wonderful way you can activate, say, the heart center, which is a beautiful center, absolutely marvelous center, where higher consciousness dwells, where you can gain great intuition, where you can gain tremendous peace, where you can gain actually blissful states if you activate it enough. But it's a center of love, as I think you mentioned earlier. And prayer done correctly, or healing, if you like, done correctly, through that center, particularly if you visualize that energy going through that center, although you're doing it for the benefit of others, which is the best reason to do it, it will also help you because it will start to activate that chakra, which has been neglected by so many people on earth, and it'll start to become more active, and then it will start, your higher consciousness will start to guide your lower consciousness, and then, as you say, the vices will become the graces. That's beautiful.
Yes, beautiful. Yes, and it's just so fascinating, because That's the meaning, isn't it? To bring us into into the enlightenment. And
Yeah.
just, I'd really want to know how you see that. What does enlightenment mean for you?
Well, enlightenment in its highest state
Mm,
is many things, but it's certainly it's a state of peace. It's a strange thing when people talk about ecstasy and bliss, and they use various things, and they talk about the sexual, the drug base, the stimulating activities of life. Actually, the greatest states of bliss and the most lasting ones come from peace,
yes.
not stimulation. So
Yes.
when you start to go to the higher centers, you start to know that. When you are able to activate the Christ center or third eye, and I've done this partially, not fully, Dr. King activated it fully.
Wow.
So I'm still on the journey. But when you really do, you start to know things and
Mm,
you move beyond a conscious mind process into a super conscious mind process. So I would certainly say that true enlightenment is not an accumulation of knowledge.
no.
It's a state of being.
Being. Yes.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's so beautiful. It is a state of being, isn't it? And for me, it's also a state of being in peace, but a state of being in wholeness, in
Yeah.
balance, because we live in this world of duality with the feminine and the masculine, the high and the low, and the good and the evil, and we come from the oneness. So having that state of balance within oneself is that total peaceful place, isn't it?
It is, and it's strangely enough, I mean, one thing that you do, I'll just give a stupid example then, if I may, although it's not quite as stupid as it sounds, but I've had two experiences where I've activated the highest two chakras, and one of them, what you could call somatic experiences.
Wow. Yeah.
And as I repeat, they weren't full rises of Kundalini, but they were consciously induced partial rises of Kundalini. First of all, to the Christ center, and the second one to the crown center. When I did the first one, which was quite recently, it's only about 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, and I've been practicing this for over 50 years, and I've devoted it, and I mean every single day
Yes.
for that period. So
You do your practice. Yeah.
I do spiritual practices every day, but also the greatest thing of all is service. And that may sound like a cliche, but some cliches are true. And service is the greatest yoga. It's the greatest thing. But it's got to be real service, because when you serve others for no personal reward, I don't mean, you're earning a living and you're giving good service and you're paid a good tip or whatever it is. I don't mean that. I mean, you're doing it out of pure service for no personal gain whatsoever. And the highest form of service is spiritual service. It's not the only form. The material forms of service through medicine, through relief efforts are absolutely crucial, and they're quite wonderful, some of them, and the risks people take, they risk their lives to go to war-torn areas and what have you. I absolutely take my hat off to them all. But the highest form of service is spiritual service, and when you give that through prayer, through healing, through work like you do, work for a cause, teaching,
Yeah.
numerous ways, you activate your higher chakras. You're not doing it to activate your higher chakras, but you must activate your higher chakras. So I would attribute the experiences I've had above all else to the fact that I've devoted my life in service to what I believe to be a very, very great cause, which is called the Aetherius Society.
Yeah.
And I've been secretary of that in London in Europe, actually, since 1979, that long. So since my 20s.
Wow.
So, and I've done it every day. I don't mean, okay, I've had the occasional break, but even on my breaks, I'm still doing spiritual things usually because I want to. And so does my wife. So we're very lucky in that way. But it's a complete commitment. Now, when I had the first experience of somatic one, as I say, which was about 3 years ago, I think, I found, first of all, a lot of resistance from within me to doing this. A part of me didn't want to do this at all, because what happens when you really enter samadhi, you enter a trance state, but not a negative trance state, but a controlled, induced trance state that you can come out of, you can control, because I'm not advocating trance to people. It can be dangerous. But in this state, but the point there, and I think in Patanjali, in his aphorisms, he says that the subject, the person who's doing it, the object, and the mind process, I can't remember the exact words, are all one. They all become one and the same thing. And that's another way of putting it. And you're in that state. So I had a lot of resistance from my lower self, you might say, to giving up on my conscious thought to enter this state. But when I did, I knew what to meditate on. I didn't sort of think there and think, I think I'll go and meditate on that. And I think it's not that kind of thing. You're not thinking like that. You know where to go. And when you do, you know whatever you meditate on. And it's a state of knowing at that point. It's not a state of knowledge, it's a state of knowing. And one of the things, for whatever reason, that I meditated on in that state, and this is the silly example I was going to give, was a hedgehog. Yeah. And I have no particular reason to do that, except that in my childhood, I used to rescue hedgehogs a bit from tennis netting and things like that, tennis lawn netting. But my point is this, I knew that hedgehog. I admire that hedgehog. I know why it was doing what it did. I know how it felt. I know its fear. I know why it has its sort of porcupine bristles, whatever you call those. And this is the point. I will never feel the same way about a hedgehog again, because I think they're fine creatures, and I admire them. But that's because I know I've been one with a hedgehog. Study the sort of, biology, and you could study the study of animals and creatures till you're blue in the face analytically, but you won't know that hedgehog until you've meditated on it.
Yes, that's beautiful. I love that. That's so. And I just wanted to say that when I do my kriyas, and as I bring that energy up, I like to meditate in the dark, and then I always feel the fluttering. I've been feeling that for many years of the opening of the.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then it's the light. The light comes, and just what you said, your lower body. It's like I can feel myself almost going and out of the experience, going into that place. But it's like you've got to have total surrender at that moment.
That's the word. You've got it in one. Thank you for that. That's the exact word. You have to surrender to it. But you do it knowingly. You don't do it like in a sort of vague negative trance state. You know what you're doing. You're in control of the situation, and you know where you have to go, but part of you doesn't want to go there.
No, it pulls you back.
Yeah. I mean, even Dr. King said the first time he looked through his third eye,
yes.
And he did practice Kundalini yoga. I don't recommend it. He wasn't the average person.
Yeah.
But he did do that. And I'm talking about in the 1940s and early 50s, that long ago, he was doing that. And he said the first time he opened the third eye, he felt tremendous loneliness, like alone in the universe kind of loneliness.
Yeah.
And this too, these reactions can come. They're resistors. And then, of course, he said later on in another description, when he took it higher, that loneliness went completely. Because it's not real. It isn't real. Yeah. We're all one with all life.
That's right. There's only
these are ways
story.
To stop us. Yeah. With me, it was like a fear of losing control. I didn't want to lose control. I thought what I thought was control anyway.
Yes.
There's a part of me didn't want to do that.
That's exactly how I was feeling. It's almost like I was just so ready, but obviously I wasn't ready. You know what I mean?
You will be. You will be.
Because it's such an amazing experience to let go and to be one with.
And the beautiful thing is, you come out of it, and then you come back, and then you activate the conscious mind again. So the conscious mind actually doesn't go, and it comes back to what we were saying earlier, but it's being directed And you hit the nail on the head at the beginning when you talked about the soul. The soul is then starting to direct the rest of our consciousness. This is why some of these very irresponsible visualizations, and which I have seen, I could go on about them, where people, they think they know the colors of the chakras, which that's a whole subject in itself. So they'll say, for example, this one said, well, the sex center is orange. Well, okay, there's some truth in that. I would say more than a million. But the point is, even if it was orange, it doesn't mean you want to start visualizing orange in your sex center.
No.
It doesn't necessarily need that at all. I mean, the only two colors I would advocate in your visualization, well, no, they aren't the only two, actually, but I'm going to say two of the colors. In my workshops, which I'm running, I go into some color-based visualizations. There's certain colors you can use in certain ways, but they aren't necessarily the color you associate with that chakra. I mean, violet, which is coming from the earth, the violet flame is good for all chakras.
Yes.
I would say especially the lower ones.
Yes.
Even though none of those would be described as being violet in themselves. And of course, white is great because white includes all the colors of the spectrum anyway. And so whatever colors needed can come.
That's what I do. I just feel the white light just pulling.
Yeah.
But it's really funny that you say that, because in all the yogis, they don't talk about colors of the chakras. There is that's a Western,
It's a game. It's almost like a silly game that people have adopted.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's beautiful, because
Okay.
I Sri Yukteswar. I mean, I just
love him.
The Holy Science. What an unbelievable book was. That's just so great.
Yeah.
And I really feel, his presence around me,
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, it's just so beautiful. But these were, he was so down to earth. The yogis are so down to earth in their teaching.
Absolutely.
And they put it in such a simple way. I think the West has made it so complicated with, you've got to do this and all these colors and you've got to do it this way and everything. No.
And they don't know. The people who are teaching it, they don't know, because here's the point.
Because they've never experienced it themselves.
They haven't experienced it. And also, even if they could see, like Leadbeater was, the Theosophist Leadbeater, who was one of the leading Theosophists, over 100 years ago, I suppose now. But I mean, he did this book about it, and he spoke about the colors of the chakras. But he can, and even if he was right in every detail, he can only tell you what it's looking like now. That's what he was seeing now. It doesn't mean it's the way it should be. It doesn't mean it's the way it was or the way it will be. It just means that's how it's looking now. Now, it's true to say there are certain colors associated, you might say, with certain chakras, just as there are certain mystical elements associated with certain chakras. But they are only describing the capabilities of that chakra. They're not telling you what color you want it to vibrate to at any given moment. So little learning is a dangerous thing. People get a little bit of learning, and even those colors aren't agreed upon by everybody, or even the great yogis. So it's a little learning. They learn a little bit. Oh, okay, solar plexus is yellow, right? Then we'll do, and they invent something. Just invent something and teach it to someone. And as I said earlier, hopefully no harm will be done. But if it was really done powerfully, it could be dangerous. I mean, I'm going to give one tip to everybody. I would advise no one to try and force Kundalini. Don't try and force it.
No.
Allow it.
It happens
Allow
over
it.
many years as well. You've got to build
And lives.
many lifetimes. You might not even activate it this time. But if you do the work on it and, eventually... It's a lifelong life process.
It is. I mean, there's two things you need to do, whether you're kind of aware. Most people may not be aware of this, but even with their more basic, I'm going to say, religious or spiritual philosophies, they are doing this if they're following them properly and they're good philosophies. And that is, you need to remove the blockages in the aura gradually, or transmute. Let's use that word. That's the great word, really. Transmute those blockages and realign the nadis, the channels, so the energy is flowing in the right direction, and especially flowing up through the back starting to flow up through the back, even if it's not Kundalini in its fullness, prana starting to flow up the back of the spine, and this may sound a funny thing to say, but you can't avoid that base of the spine. You have to go through it. Sorry.
No, but are you talking about Sushumna? Sushumna, I can't say.
Yeah, Sushumna, I mean, if you're able to raise Kundalini up through Sushumna, and I've done it, as I mentioned earlier, partially, I have done that. That's great. But if you look at, again, some of the depictions of Sushumna, there's like three main channels up the spine. There's Sushumna in the center of the spine, and within it there's said to be an inner channel called Citrine even. But it's supposed to be 1,000th, I think, of the width of a hair. It's a very thin channel. And then each side of that, you've got two channels. One's Ida, one's Pingala. Yeah. Now, when they're depicted in their diagrams, very often you see them crossing over. So you see them crossing over actually between the solar plexus and the heart center. And you see them crossing over between the throat center and the Christ center. Now, the way I see that personally, so I'm just giving my opinion now on that, is that those are sort of very rudimentary drawings of a blockage which has occurred in two key positions. Actually, there are three. There's one at the base of the spine as well. They're called granthis in the old Sanskrit terminology. Now, those, I mean, I don't think Ida, for example, is on the left-hand side. Pingala is on the right. When Dr. King gives his teachings, I wrote a book with him called Realize Your Inner Potential, and in there are some very advanced exercises which he thought hard and long about before, long for him, which, he's very quick anyway, but about whether to include them in this book. And he did. They're completely safe if you follow the guidelines that we give in that book. But he kept it very simple. You have the three channels. He doesn't go into crossing over. And I think that's because even if there are these blockages, you're not really meant to cross over. Well, ideally, in the ideal world, you would ultimately transmute those blockages. This would be my view. And you'd end up with these three channels and a pure channel in each case without this what I would call a confluence of nadis. It isn't even just three, I don't think. I think there's, it's kept simple. But the point being, though, there are some people who've seen this, they've read this, and they go out teaching this. Because it exists, they say this is what you should strive for. No. Or because the base center is usually considered to be red, you should go and visualize red in your base center. No. And also when if you are visualizing chakras, and on my workshops, I'm very careful about how you should do that, if you do it at all, and which chakras you should visualize as well. Don't do it on the physical body. Don't visualize them in the physical position. You've got to keep it in the aura. There's a way of doing it, which you need to be taught, just to be safe, because if it really did work, you could draw a lot of energy in the wrong way to the wrong place, and you could end up quite a troubled person.
Yes.
Sorry to say that.
It's true, but Kundalini is such a buzzword these days.
I know.
Raise your Kundalini, do it, but yeah.
If you really, it's and at the same time, it's an absolutely wonderful, most wonderful thing. You can revere it, really. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I mean, and it's connected to Mother Earth. That's why it's female. It's a fire, and it does burn, and you can feel that burning. That's not just an idea. It can be quite painful, actually, but it's a beautiful thing.
It's Shakti, isn't it? Shakti.
Yes, Shakti, and it should be done carefully, with care, with kind of gentleness as well, and not force.
And could you just tell us a little bit, your Kundalini awakening? How did it feel? What did you feel afterwards? In them, the two times that happened to you.
Yeah, and people have asked me that. The main thing, particularly after the first one, because I'd never done it before, I've had it in my mind for decades. Could I do this? And I did have a conversation with Dr. King way back, and he told me I could do it, because I didn't want to delude myself, think I could do something I can't do. When it actually happened, and when it was finished, not while it happened, but afterwards, the main thing, Yogini, I felt was relief. And that may sound really odd. Yes, it's blissful. I'd had states of bliss before this, to a degree, to quite a degree, where they've lasted for hours. They've lasted so long that I was even worried that they would never end. Worried that they would never end. It's an odd thing, I know, but it's again the sort of supposed to lower self panicking a bit. What's going on here? But it was relief, and the reason it was is because it's true. I mean, I believed it already. I'd had plenty of experience to verify that it's true. I had abundant faith. Just based on that experience and based on Dr. King and knowing him as I did, and the various teachings that I've come across. But when you know, right, okay, that's it. It's all right. I don't have to. It's not an opinion. It's not a belief. It's not faith. It is. And so that was my first reaction. And also I've kind of got there, okay, after all these years, yeah, it can be done. And I also thought, then the next thing I thought was, look, if I can do it, other people can do it. Because, it's something that I wasn't sure what I even wanted to talk about. But then I thought, well, if I don't, at least it shows this path that I follow really does work in that way. I mean, the main goal of the path that I follow is to serve other people. And if you never gain samadhi, it would be fine. You'd still be ticking all the boxes. You'd still be serving fully. You'd help humanity. You'd help the world. You'd help individuals. And no one can say more than that. But it also works as a path to enlightenment. And that's what I thought. I'll have to talk about this. Yeah. Actually, you're the first interview I've done on this topic outside of the Aetherius Society. I've done multiple interviews. I've appeared on numerous radio and TV shows over the years on all kinds of topics. But I haven't talked about this with, as it were, on another show with someone who's, not in the Aetherius Society about this before. So this is my first. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for giving us your insight into
Pleasure.
That's so beautiful. And being of service. And also, what about being celibate? I mean, I've been celibate for a really long time. And is that important for Kundalini?
Well, I realize it is. Now, I am not a fine example of this. I mean, I'm celibate now. My wife and I, made that choice. But I'm not going to say I've led a life of celibacy. I haven't.
No.
But certainly, I don't think you'd enter that state, certainly safely, unless you were celibate by then and before then. So I think it's crucial, and it is quite simple as to why, really, because if you're having sex, it's not just sex, by the way. It could be anger, it could be greed, it could be a number of things, but sex is an obvious one. You diverting the energies away
to the lower,
from the higher chakras.
That's right.
This is the thing. If you start meditating, as some people teach you to do on lower centers, you're going to draw the energies down to those centers, obviously.
Exactly.
And that's not what you need, most people.
That's
you
right.
need to start drawing them up. Yes,
down.
exactly.
Yeah.
The heart, the third eye, whatever. So you would be then sort of engaging in sexual activity, let's say. Let's say you were, and at the same time, let's say you were also trying to raise your energies. You'd have an absolute confusion. You'd have an internal confusion. And this could cause you a lot of problems, and they could manifest in various ways. So to get to those highest states, I think Dodkin's very careful. I think he says something like, I could have this wrong, but not 1 in 1,000, or it might have been 1 million, could enter it without being celibate. When I did, as I mentioned earlier, ask Dr. King if I could do this in this life, he did say to me, yes, you could, but there's 2 things you'd have to do. And one of those 2 things was, I'll tell you what they were. One was breathing. He kept it very simple because he knew what I meant. I knew what he meant. And the other, he said, is sex, by which he meant controlling sex. controlling, transmuting, and that involves celibacy. But the point here is, though, that if you, and in some ways I feel unworthy to be saying all this because I haven't done it throughout my life, and I have, and some yogis have. But what I have done throughout my life is given maximum, I think, within all reason, anyone who knows what me would say, service to others, and made many sacrifices to do that. And I'm happy to have done that. But what I'd say, though, is that there are states of ecstasy, and people don't realize this, which are greater than even if you have really, inverted commas, good sex and satisfying sex, and I have done that, it doesn't come close.
No.
Not even close. And it's certainly not as lasting. No. And it's certainly more debilitating. And there's certainly an after effect of, as I mentioned, confusing the internal energies. But it doesn't come close to the bliss you can gain in the higher peaceful states, which are very lasting. They can last for many hours if you let them. Unless you have to leave them and give service, which it would be a great thing to do, as a matter of fact. But they can last for hours and hours, and I've experienced it. And it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. It doesn't sort of come to a conclusion and end. It goes on.
Yes.
Because it's not physically induced. I mean, there are many stories that, the virgin birth of Jesus isn't unique in history at all. The idea of a virgin birth. If you go to the Mahabharata, there's multiple virgin births in the Mahabharata. And I believe there will be again in the future, by the way, definitely. On Earth.
I believe that as well, Richard. You don't have to have physical, there is divine conception.
Indeed. So there will come a time in the future when that will happen, but it'll be through an activation of higher centers. And also when you come to relationships, people don't think they can have a good relationship unless it's a lot of people, they don't have a fully loving relationship without sex. You can have a wonderful relationship if you have a soul affinity, an affinity between the higher chakras with someone can be, much closer bond. And I would say one that will last more through the lives because you'll be more connected to the same path of evolution. Yes. If it's the higher chakras. Exactly. Whereas a blood link, a bloodline, a physical relative, you might love them very much and they could be a great friend, but they aren't necessarily on the same evolutionary trajectory as you are through the lives. They might be, and they might well not be. Yeah,
that's so true. Because divine love, when you're in love with the person's soul, never runs out. But their when you're in love with someone with their physical being, then that's going to grow old and eventually die. It's all about having a soulful relationship, not a karmic, egoic,
Just look at the divorce rate. I mean,
that's right.
It's provable, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. Wow. And please tell us about your mentor, Dr. King, and please tell us about the Aetherius Society.
Sure. Can I just mention before I do that that I've got some events coming up?
Of course, please do.
So one is on March the 1st. I think there's only about 5 places left for that. So we put another one in, and I think you're coming, which is wonderful.
I am. I can't wait.
There's another one we've scheduled now on April the 5th for that. And also,
what is it called?
It's called Awaken Your Chakras. I'm going to look at the title now. Key to All Spiritual Powers. Yeah.
Lovely.
And so that's in London, and then we've got one up in Barnsley, just off the M1, and so it's quite easy for people to get to, and that's on March the 8th. So anyone would be welcome. But coming to Dr. King, he was truly remarkable. He wasn't what I would call an avatar. So he was a person who came to Earth with great wisdom greater than you'd even gain in samadhi on Earth.
Wow.
So he didn't, his whole approach to it, I mean, his description, for example, of cosmic consciousness, And my second experience was, I call it entry-level cosmic consciousness, is what I describe that as. And it's wonderful. You get what Sivananda called the I celestial. And you're then, it's no longer a state of knowing, then it's a real state of being. And it's a state of being one with all life, one with God, which is the entire universe. Because God is all.
Yeah.
But Dr. King came to Earth as a great avatar. And so his wisdom, his knowledge, his experience was beyond that. As a matter of fact, I was privileged to co-author his biography 5 years ago, or just over 5 years ago, which is now out as an audio book. And he is extremely advanced, I would say, and maybe a little bit inaccessible to some people. Like a lot of people love Yogananda, but you mentioned Sri Yukteswar, who was, his teacher, and they don't know about him. And he was more advanced. He, in fact, gave Yogananda his cosmic consciousness state, as Sri Krishna gave Arjuna his cosmic consciousness state. So Dr. King, when he tackled these things, he did it in a very technical manner. He describes it in a very technical manner. He will tell you in a book called The Nine Freedoms, he explains exactly what happens when you truly, fully activate the base center, I correct myself. He really focuses on the higher center, but you go through the base center, the sex center, solar plexus. What happens when you activate the heart chakra, the throat chakra? He goes into great detail about, and then the Christ center. When you go beyond that, you leave Earth. He left Earth, but he didn't even dwell in the cosmic state at all. He came straight back because his whole focus was love for the Mother Earth. And he didn't need it, by the way. So he didn't actually go through it. Because one thing to remember, I always feel, about these states of deep meditation, they're wonderful experiences. No, that's putting it mildly. You can't even describe it really in that way. That's almost belittles it to say that. But what they are in the end is essential staging posts on your journey of evolution.
Yeah.
So even cosmic consciousness is a staging post on your journey of evolution.
To go higher and higher and higher.
You need it to come back and really raise the Kundalini in its entirety. When you do, like, say, Count Saint Germain did, for just to name one, you ascend. And then you don't die and you don't go through, because reincarnation shouldn't really exist. That's, I know, an unusual thing to say, but it does exist, and it's good that we know that it does. But in its purity, if we were really evolved, we wouldn't reincarnate.
No.
We wouldn't spend time on the other realms in a certain place, in a certain vibration, a level suited to our evolution. It wouldn't be necessary. It is necessary at the moment, but in the fullness of evolution, it won't be.
Yeah.
And all will start to become one. And Dr. King knew all of that. And he bequeathed the Aetherius Society, which is, as I mentioned earlier, it's advanced, it's service orientated, but it's performing multiple missions for the benefit of humanity and working in communication with higher beings from other planets. I think that's the simplest way to put it. And he received many very advanced communications from other worlds.
In multidimensional,
in multidimensional existence, yeah. You might not see them even if you could get to Mars, but they are there.
Yeah. Wow. Absolutely beautiful. It's just astounding. And so there's an Aetherius Society in Fulham, and do you have them around the world?
We do. So Chris is in Michigan, as you know. We have another headquarters. So there's two headquarters, one in London, in Fulham, one in Hollywood, in LA. And we're not everywhere. I mean, we're not enormous. I would say we've got certainly tens of thousands of supporters, stroke friends, stroke members, but not millions.
Yeah.
But we reach millions, but they don't all support us.
But it's really beautiful as well that you have the temple there and you have free healing, which is just, I think that's beautiful.
Well, that the healing technique, and there's a book called The Magic of Healing that I co-author. I didn't co-author it. I wrote it. I was asked to write it by HarperCollins at the time, and it came out. But it includes in it Dr. King's full technique. And one of the things he teaches in there is self-healing. In fact, we're going to put an event on later this year, a kind of a retreat up in the Lake District, a beautiful place, at the end of September. We haven't even got the advertising out on it yet, but one of the things we hope to do at it is this wonderful self-healing technique that's in that book, because that technique is chakra orientated. It works on the basis, as does our healing, given free of charge in our temple every Tuesday, as a matter of fact. People can contact us, aetherius.org, or they can go to my website if they want details, richardlawrence.co.uk if they want details. But with this technique, which he devised, you balance the chakras, because if you balance those chakras, and a healer can help you to do this for you, or you can do it yourself, and he teaches you how to do it yourself in this technique, then you will have much greater mental, physical well-being and greater health. Because coming back to the aura again, what the state of the aura reflects on the physical body. It is not the other way around. So the aura is not a reflection of the body. The body is a reflection of the aura. Mm. In fact, you mentioned Maya earlier.
Yeah.
And I prefer to think of it as not so much just delusion, the physical world, as a reflection of a higher world.
Yes. Mm. Yeah. One not quite so spiritual and
no.
It is the reflection of the spiritual world, isn't it?
It is.
One that through us and through our consciousness will become spiritual, because
exactly.
we're all evolving into our light energy bodies. Eventually, as you said, it will all become one in thousands of years time. Heaven and earth shall be.
Exactly. Very true. And if we get our chakras in balance in these various ways that we can, it will reflect on our physical body. It will reflect on our mental bodies. It will reflect on our state of mind. It will influence the conscious mind, and the higher part of us will direct the lower part of us, which is how it should be, rather than the lower part of us being extremely active and the higher part of us neglected. That's not a natural balance, and we need to change that.
Yeah. And that's like, once you have the inner balance, then your outer life becomes in balance. It's a natural,
that's it,
isn't it?
Very, very much so, yeah. Because, and it's amazing. And you start to get an inner knowing of what you should do. There's a wonderful statement in one of the prayers we use, because one of the things Dr. King was to, and I know this is controversial, but he channeled the Master Jesus, and he gave a wonderful set of teachings called the 12 blessings, actually. And in those 12 blessings, there are some beautiful practices, not just of prayer, but for the individual to improve their inner state of being as well, and find greater peace and so forth, and activate certain chakras, by the way. But in one of the prayers that Jesus gave, not in another prayer he gave called the New Lord's Prayer, he said, "We pray that never again will I turn from my inner vision of you." So if we have these inner visions, these higher states, it may not be full samadhi, it may not even be samadhi, but a higher state of realization, a higher intuitive perception, then that needs to filter through into our lives, so that we don't turn away from that. Because people have a habit of, they have a flash of realization, and then something happens and they just don't follow it. I mean, we've all done it, actually. But if we can start to live it in our lives will change for the good, and our karma will change. And if our karma changes, then the world changes.
Oh, absolutely wonderful, Richard. Honestly, I just love talking to you, and I just want to say thank you for all of your divine wisdom on this very important, vast subject of the Kundalini and awakening your chakras. And thank you for being on the Great Awakening Show.
Well, it's been an honor, and thank you. It's very nice to meet you on the show. Thank you.
Yes.